He never repeats himself because his words are not thrown around carelessly. They are precise, intentional, and anchored in clarity. When a Sigma male speaks, he has already filtered his thoughts, weighed the meaning, and chosen language that reflects exactly what he intends. So when someone claims they didn't get it or pushes him to restate what was already clear, he doesn't see a misunderstanding, he sees a lack of respect, attention, or alignment. And that's the moment his silence becomes louder than any repetition ever could. What people don't realize is that asking him to explain twice is asking him to dilute himself. It's asking him to re-justify what he already made clear, to re-enter a conversation he has mentally closed, or to re-engage with someone who didn't value the clarity he offered the first time. While others ramble, negotiate, or over-explain to be understood, the Sigma male operates differently. His boundary is built into his communication. Once he has stated the truth, the expectation is simple. Listen, understand, and act. Those who don't meet that expectation reveal themselves faster than they think. His refusal to repeat himself is not arrogance, it's self-preservation. He knows his time is finite, his energy is valuable, and his clarity shouldn't be wasted on people who aren't ready to hear it. If this kind of psychological insight resonates with you, if you see yourself in these patterns or recognize them in someone else, make sure you subscribe to Silent Wise. We explore the deeper layers of behavior most people overlook. Before the full breakdown starts, drop "I don't repeat" in the comments. He speaks with precision the first time, so repetition feels unnecessary and insulting. When he speaks, every word has already passed through layers of internal refinement. The hesitations removed, the clutter trimmed, the meaning sharpened, until only the essential truth remains. He doesn't talk to fill silence or to impress. He speaks to communicate clearly and efficiently. So when he offers his thoughts the first time, he does it with an intentional calm that reflects the effort behind it. His tone is steady, his message crisp, his meaning unmistakable. To him, speaking once is enough, because he chooses his words with care. Repetition, therefore, doesn't feel like clarification. It feels like someone doubting the clarity he already delivered. When someone asks him to repeat himself, it triggers something deeper than annoyance. It signals one of two possibilities. Either they weren't paying attention, or they didn't respect the weight of what he said. Both interpretations are violations of how he values communication. He operates on the principle that listening is as important as speaking, that if he offers precision, the other person should offer presence. His patience thins not because he is rigid, but because he expects mutual effort. He doesn't demand agreement, but he does expect awareness. When someone claims they didn't catch it, he doesn't feel misunderstood, he feels dismissed. And that subtle dismissal is exactly what pushes him into silence. Once that silence settles, he withdraws fully. He won't fight for attention or chase understanding. If someone couldn't absorb his message the first time, he assumes it wasn't meant for them. His precision isn't up for negotiation. His clarity isn't a performance he repeats on command. To him, explaining himself twice dilutes the integrity of his communication, turning something intentional into something forced. So he steps back, allowing his silence to replace what others fail to hear. And in that silence, a quiet truth becomes clear. The Sigma male doesn't repeat himself because his words are already complete the moment he speaks them. He views repeated explanations as a sign the other person wasn't listening or didn't value his words. When he speaks, he assumes the exchange is built on mutual respect, that if he offers clarity, the other person offers attention. So when someone asks him to repeat something he already expressed with intention, it doesn't feel like a simple request. It feels like a breach of that unspoken agreement. To him, meeting a second explanation signals something deeper. Either they weren't listening, or they didn't care enough to hold on to what he said. And for a man who values depth over noise, presence over chatter, that realization hits harder than any disagreement. It tells him exactly where he stands in the other person's priorities, and exactly where they stand in his. Once he senses that his words weren't valued the first time, his energy shifts instantly. He becomes distant, reserved, less willing to invest himself in the conversation. Not out of pettiness, but out of principle. He believes attention is the purest form of respect, and indifference the clearest form of disregard. People try to excuse their lack of listening as distraction or misunderstanding, but he reads it differently. He sees it as a measure of how seriously they treat his presence. If he gave thought, effort, and sincerity the first time, why should he offer them again? Why should he repeat himself for someone who didn't bother to receive what he already gave? And that's where the quiet wall forms. He won't argue, won't raise his voice, won't push to be heard. He simply withdraws. His silence becomes the boundary he refuses to verbalize twice. Those who listen the first time earn his trust effortlessly. Those who don't rarely get a second chance. He knows the people who value him will replay his words in their mind, not force him to replay them out loud. And the world that fails to pay attention the first time rarely deserves another explanation. For him, the truth is simple. If someone doesn't value his words, they won't value his presence either. So he stops offering both. He refuses to waste energy clarifying what was already clear. When he speaks, he doesn't scatter words like seeds hoping something will grow. He plants each sentence deliberately, with intention and clarity. His communication is streamlined, direct, and stripped of unnecessary padding. So when someone pretends they don't understand or acts confused by something he made unmistakably clear, he doesn't interpret it as a lack of comprehension. He sees it as a lack of effort, and he refuses to invest more energy into clarifying what was already communicated with precision the first time. To him, repeating himself is like redoing a task perfectly completed, pointless, draining, and disrespectful to his own time. He knows clarity when he delivers it. He knows whether his message was simple, direct, and accessible. So when someone attempts to reopen what he already closed, he recognizes the real intention behind the request: avoidance, laziness, manipulation, or a desire to push him into over-explaining. But he doesn't operate on emotional pressure. He refuses to be pulled into a loop where he carries the mental load, while others remain passive. His energy is reserved for meaningful conversations, not cycles of clarification that benefit only the listener who wasn't paying attention. Instead of repeating himself, he offers silence, a quiet signal that he won't spend his strength on something that should have been heard the first time. And that silence becomes the boundary he never explains twice. It's his way of protecting his mental clarity and emotional discipline. He doesn't argue, doesn't rephrase, doesn't negotiate understanding. If someone didn't catch it the first time, they can reflect, replay the moment in their mind, or figure it out without him carrying the burden. His refusal isn't coldness, it's self-respect. He knows his energy is finite and powerful, meant for growth, purpose, and people who listen with intention. For everyone else, the conversation ends exactly where he left it, clear, complete, and not open for repetition. He knows repeating himself invites manipulation, excuses, or emotional games. He learned long ago that the moment he explains himself twice, the dynamic shifts, not toward clarity, but toward vulnerability. Repetition gives people openings they didn't have the first time, room to twist his words, space to distort his meaning, or opportunities to play emotional games he refuses to engage in. The first explanation is truth, the second becomes negotiation, and Sigma males don't negotiate their intentions. They know that once they repeat themselves, the other person might start fishing for loopholes, searching for emotional leverage, or crafting excuses to avoid accountability. His boundary is simple. Say it once, say it clearly, and let the truth stand on its own. People who thrive on manipulation often pretend not to understand the first time. They ask for repetition, not out of confusion, but because they want to test his patience, soften the boundary, or pull him into emotional labor. They hope a second explanation will sound weaker, more flexible, or more accommodating. But he recognizes the tactic instantly. He sees how insecurity hides behind, "Can you explain that again?" and how avoidance disguises itself as confusion. He refuses to get manipulators the space to rewrite the narrative by dragging him into a cycle of explanations that erode the firmness of his original message. To him, repeating himself is the first step toward being played, and he closes that door without hesitation. Instead of re-explaining, he lets silence answer for him. He lets the original statement stand untouched, unbent, and unquestionable. His refusal to repeat doesn't escalate the conversation. It neutralizes the manipulation before it begins. And in that stillness, people reveal their true motives. Those with good intentions take responsibility and reflect. Those with hidden motives grow restless, frustrated, or defensive. His boundary becomes the filter through which character exposes itself. He doesn't need confrontation to see the truth. He just needs not to repeat himself. He understands people reveal their intentions by how they respond the first time he speaks. The moment he speaks, he isn't just delivering information, he's observing. He watches the subtle shifts in expression, the micropauses, the way someone's eyes move, the tone they choose, the energy that rises or drops in the space between his words and their reaction. Their first response tells him everything he needs to know. If they listen with presence, he sees respect. If they dismiss or minimize his words, he sees their priorities. If they hesitate, deflect, or grow defensive, he sees their insecurity. He knows that people reveal their truest intentions before they have time to sanitize their reaction. That first beat of silence after he speaks is where their character leaks through, raw, unfiltered, and incredibly honest. Because he understands this, he treats initial responses like psychological fingerprints. He doesn't need long conversations or repeated explanations to understand who he's dealing with. He just needs that first moment. The listener either aligns with clarity or recoils from it. They either engage with authenticity or reveal manipulation. They either respect his boundary or test it instantly. Every reaction is a data point, helping him decide exactly how much access that person should have to his time, energy, or inner world. And once that judgment is formed, he rarely changes it. People think he's quiet because he's mysterious, but the truth is much simpler. He already understood them the moment they responded. That's why he refuses to repeat himself. The first response is the purest one, the one untouched by reflection or strategy. When someone ignores his words, dismisses them, or pretends confusion, he recognizes more than misunderstanding. He recognizes intention. Maybe they weren't listening. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they wanted him to carry the emotional load. Either way, the first reaction reveals more about them than a second conversation ever could. So he doesn't offer round two. He doesn't dilute his clarity to accommodate someone else's avoidance. He lets that first moment stand as the truth it is, and he moves forward accordingly, with precision, with discernment, and without looking back. He sees explanation as a one-time offering. After that, actions must follow to him. Explaining himself is not a negotiation. It's a declaration. When he speaks the first time, he is offering clarity, direction, or truth with full sincerity. He isn't vague, he isn't indecisive, and he isn't testing the waters. He states exactly what he means, trusting that the other person will understand not only the message, but the intention behind it. That initial explanation is the bridge he builds between himself and others. But once the words are spoken, the bridge becomes their responsibility. He will not reinforce it, rebuild it, or repaint it. The first explanation is the entire blueprint. After that, he expects movement, not questions. To him, repeating himself is a signal that the other person prefers discussion over action, excuses over accountability, and he has no patience for that dynamic. He knows that people show their respect through behavior, not through promises, apologies, or reassurances. If they truly understood his words the first time, their actions will shift naturally. If they didn't, nothing he repeats will make a difference. So he watches closely. Does the person adjust, follow through, change tone, or show alignment? Or do they return with the same patterns, the same energy, the same distractions? His explanation is the threshold. Crossing it requires effort. Ignoring it exposes intention. And because he values authenticity over performance, he uses action as the only reliable language for measuring whether someone is serious or simply pretending to be. Words react, actions reveal. This is why he never circles back to restate what he already made clear. He refuses to be the engine driving someone else's growth while they stand still. Once he has spoken his truth, the next move is not his. It belongs to the listener. And if that move never comes, he doesn't push or plead. He simply withdraws, conserving energy for people who understand that clarity is followed by commitment. His refusal to repeat isn't rigidity, it's discernment. He knows that life becomes simpler when explanations are given once and behavior tells the rest of the story. So after the first offering of truth, he doesn't speak again. He watches, he evaluates, and he lets silence do what repetition never can. He protects his boundaries by walking away instead of re-explaining himself. When someone pushes him to repeat what he's already made clear, he doesn't dig deeper into explanation. He steps back. To him, re-explaining himself isn't a sign of patience. It's a violation of his boundaries. It means someone ignored his clarity, dismissed his intention, or treated his words as if they were optional. Rather than bending himself to accommodate that disregard, he draws a quiet, unwavering line. He knows that boundaries spoken once are enough for those who respect him, and pointless for those who don't. So instead of engaging in a loop of clarification, he withdraws his energy, his attention, and his presence. Walking away is not surrender, it's self-respect in motion. His silence in these moments speaks with a firmness words cannot match. People often misinterpret his withdrawal as emotional distance, avoidance, or even arrogance, but they fail to see the deeper truth. Walking away is his final message. It communicates that he will not argue for understanding, fight to be heard, or beg someone to respect what he already explained with sincerity. His boundary is simple. He speaks once, and after that, the responsibility shifts. If someone challenges that boundary by demanding repetition, he sees it as a test of how far they expect him to bend, and he refuses to bend. He doesn't engage in emotional games, doesn't entertain manipulation, and doesn't entertain people who pretend confusion to gain power. By walking away, he protects not just his boundaries, but his peace. He avoids the emotional exhaustion that comes from trying to convince someone who has no intention of listening. He avoids the frustration of repeating truths to people who only value the sound, not the meaning. And most importantly, he avoids diluting his voice to fit someone else's comfort zone. His silence becomes the shield that carries him forward. He preserves his energy for environments where communication is mutual, respect is reciprocal, and understanding isn't a battle. Walking away isn't the end of the conversation. It's his way of choosing himself over unnecessary noise. When a Sigma male refuses to repeat himself, it's not stubbornness, it's a declaration of self-worth. His clarity is intentional, his words are already distilled truth, and his boundaries are etched into the silence that follows. He doesn't raise his voice, negotiate understanding, or chase validation. He simply speaks once, and the world either listens or loses the privilege of hearing him again. That quiet certainty is what makes him so difficult to manipulate, and so compelling to observe. If this breakdown made you see the psychology behind silence and self-respect in a new light, make sure you subscribe to Silent Wise. This channel isn't about noise. It's about insight, depth, and the mindsets that set certain men apart. Drop "I don't repeat" in the comments if you're ready for the next transformation.